Welcome to the Hawkeye Sidekick podcast. And you're very welcome back to the Hawkeye Sidekick Hurling podcast with your host Mark Kennedy, joined again this week by Kieran and Ruairi Walsh. And in this podcast episode, we'll be reviewing the Munster and Leinster Senior Hurling Championship opening round fixtures this weekend. Hope you enjoy. Suppose we'll get into the Munster and Leinster Senior Hurling Championship. Maybe we'll start with the Leinster Senior Hurling Championship first. There's 3 games on tap this weekend. We have Antrim versus Dublin, Galway entertaining Wexford and Salthill, and Kilkenny taking on Westmeath. I suppose, guys, from your perspective, what are the main talking points going into the Leinster Senior Hurling Championship? Maybe we start with Rory. You first.
Yeah, just start with Antrim and Dublin. I'm just wondering, Antrim, maybe from the minute this draw was made, seeing this as a perfect opportunity to lay down a marker in the Leinster Championship. We've seen them being ultra competitive in the league, especially up in Corrigan Park the last few years. But I'm just thinking like this could be Dublin, especially with the likes of Crummy out and, you know, Liam Rush not back this year, and they're definitely vulnerable here. And I know, like, you could say Dublin will be warned and they'll know what Antrim will throw at them up there, but still, I actually have a sneaking feeling here that, you know, if we're looking for a shock in the first round of either championship, this could be it. So that's the one to begin for me. I think Antrim could throw this banner in the work straight away there for Dublin. Galway at home to Wexford. It's hard to see Wexford coming up and shocking Galway here. I think Galway here could win this one maybe comfortably, like 5-6 point minimum victory here. And then look, all due respect to Westmeath, you just hope that they're competitive. Like going to Kilkenny for any team, you know, is going to be tough. Like, and facing Kilkenny in your first round match as well. And Kilkenny coming off a league final where they disappointed in terms of performance, you know, they're going to be up to show management or whatever that they're better than that. And maybe Westmeath could be the ones to kind of suffer that. Kilkenny revenge as such, as I don't know if you could call it revenge until they meet Limerick again, but, you know, just to bounce back from the players. And so yeah, look, I actually think that out of all of them, Galway at home should win. Kilkenny, you'd be thinking, going to win comfortably there. And then I just think, that Dublin could be really vulnerable up to Corrigan Park, and I might tip my hat there at Antrim, like setting the Leinster Championship alight with a shock win.
It kind of gearing up for it, isn't it? It just has the feel of there is going to be a shock in one of these provincial championships, and why not in Corrigan Park, really, as you say here, Rory. I mean, given Antrim's 1B form, I think they were pretty competitive in Corrigan Park. They've made it into a fortress here, Kieran. And to be fair to Antrim, you know, like Conal Gunning, you have Keelan Malloy, you have Burke, you have various standout guys here, and particularly with the Dunloy club team here. I think confidence should be high, and I think Darren Gleeson really, as Rory has said, really earmarked this game, and I think they'll be expecting to really run Dublin very close on Saturday.
The team is on the go a couple of years now, and I think the days of more victories should be behind them. You know, I think they've any aspirations of progressing even further. I think this is probably the one game that they would definitely highlight. They're playing Dublin and Kilkenny at home over the round robin, and maybe Kilkenny might be a stretch too far, but I think definitely this Dublin game will be one that they'll definitely fancy themselves. Now, if you go back to the league game, I think that was probably the one game that Dublin actually looked really good. It was in Parnell Park. Okay, they did kind of take the foot off the gas and let Antrim back into it. I think if Antrim can get a handle on Donald Burke, I think they go a long way. But, you know, I think if you compare players like Donald Burke and Owen O'Donnell, you know, they're really, really good players. I think like these two guys could probably start in any county team. Don't know if Antrim have players of the same quality, but I think if they can get a handle on Burke, and the fact it's up to Corrigan Park, it's a team we've seen very good teams struggle up there. Always seems to be windy, and, you know, I think this will be one of the games they will target. I think Dublin will win, but I would not be surprised if Antrim provide a shock.
Just thinking back as well to Antrim's last championship game in Corrigan Park was against Cork in the qualifier round last year, wasn't it? Antrim had come up from Joe McDonough, and Cork were the third place team in Munster, and they gave Cork a right shock 55 minutes in. There was nothing in the game, and you just think like that, if they can produce a performance like that again against a lesser opposition in Dublin compared to where Cork would be at, like, you know, it could be a great chance for Antrim. And as you said, Kieran, like, they've been knocking on the door for a couple of years, and it's time for them now to deliver at home in championship.
Kieran, can we get your viewpoint on Wexford? I suppose that challenge game down in Carrigan Shore and Tipperary was dominated for all the wrong reasons. but the performance against Tipperary fell well short. What's the optimism levels like in Wexford heading up to Salt Hill for this Galway game, and any team news from Wexford heading into this fixture?
I think the optimum levels are low. I think based on the league, which we can't always read into, but I think the biggest concern is probably personnel. The last word I've heard is that Matthew Hanlon and Damien Reck won't feature. I know locally the word is Damien Reck is carrying a knock but will play, but it's yet to be confirmed. I think if them two guys are missing, they're two really important players in the back six, and I just don't see where the replacements are for him. I think last year Paddy Foley would have been centre back. He's out this year, and I think if Damien Reck doesn't play, Matthew Hanlon isn't there. Really, I actually don't know who they're going to put centre back. Aside from that, you're looking at the Tipperary Challenge game 2 weeks ago. I think the game got the highlights for the wrong reasons, and rightly so. But I think what went unnoticed was that there was a 20-point difference in the score, which has to be really concerning. We could write off the league, but 2 weeks out from championship, challenge game or not, you'd imagine the intensity has risen, and you're not far off championship pace. And to be 20 points behind Tipperary would be a worry. I think last year, look back at the Galway game, Galway should have won that game by 10 plus points in Wexford Park. I think they were woeful. They let Wexford back into it, and I think Wexford were lucky to get the draw. I can't see that result this year. I think Galway are going to win this game, pulling up. I think Galway, this is Sheffield's second year. I think they have the personnel. There is question marks over Galway in certain positions. I do worry about, once it comes to the crunch, their reliability, how much they rely on Conor Whelan for go forward ball. But, I think especially across the back, they're so strong. They have unearthed a few players this year. There hasn't been a word of the Galway camp for the last few weeks. League finished up. They've gone away. They've locked the doors. There hasn't been one word. And I'm sure they're raring and ready to go. And I honestly think Galway are going to win this game by 10 plus points.
And then Kilkenny Westmeath, Kieran, any chance for Westmeath?
No, long and short, no. I think it's going to be a long round robin for Westmeath. If you're looking at the games, potentially they're away to Kilkenny and Dublin first two games, home game to Galway. So they're really getting this week in, week out. It's going to be tough. I think the only game that they might is at a home to Antrim is probably the game they'll target. But I think for Kilkenny, it's a chance to, they're getting an extra week really on from the league final. I do think though that we will see maybe TJ Reid feature. I think they'll want to get some game time into his legs. Obviously, the news that Billy Drennan won't feature, I think it answers the question that who'll be on the freeze, and I think it'll be TJ. Regardless of the news, I think I wouldn't have been surprised if Billy Drennan hadn't started, because I don't think he was offered enough open play. He's still a young guy, he's a lot to learn. But I think Kilkenny will get game time. I think Mullen, he's only back as well. I think guys like this will need the game time, because Kilkenny's next day out is against Galway. So they'll want to definitely get game time back in these guys. So I think Kilkenny, again, win by definitely more than 8 points in it.
And kind of going with you on the Kilkenny one, I think Galway will be fascinating. As you said, there's been absolutely no rumour mill here in the county. David Burke has been representing Galway in media duties, so that's kind of telling you the focus here in this camp. I mean, the emergence of probably Dahi Burke at centre half back looks a massive, addition here. I think Gerard McInerney a full back, yes, two can rotate. I think it's a nice balanced squad, and I think the squad that maybe in midfield with David Burke out may be a bit of a question mark, but I think this is a team that's well experienced and will go far in the championship unless Wexford produce a great performance. Would Lee Chin go back to half back here, Kieran, if worst came to the worst?
Yeah, I suppose it's an option, but then he's one of your go-to guys up front, so I suppose you're robbing Peter to pay Paul, really, aren't you? The word locally is Damien is going to play. Okay. So I suppose we'll wait and see, but I think Chin is probably needed up front more than he is at the back. I think himself and O'Connor and Connor, Roy O'Connor and Roy McDonald, or Connor McDonald, are, I suppose, the three go-to guys up there. And Well, he probably could play there. I don't think they would bring him back. I think maybe, I think midfield would probably be the furthest they bring him back.
Yeah, I still think Galway, as you say, probably. I think this is a statement of intent game for Galway here. Given the league was very indifferent, there could be an 8.9 point win here, I think. But, I think for Wexford's sake, really have to turn up and bring a bit of intensity to the proceedings. And I suppose Antrim Dublin, I think it's a very much a 50-50 call. The more I think about this game, the more that Dublin, I think, will have to be so prepared going in here to Corrigan Park. And there is some insightful forward threats here as well with Gunning. And again, from a Dublin perspective, if Crummy is out, I'm just worried here a little bit in terms of Dublin scoring unit, in terms of if, let's say, the likes of Donald Burke gets quietened a little bit in his influence, where the score is coming from. Maybe a draw here in this one for me. I think Antrim, this is going to be a big, big day for them heading back into Leinster. Would not be surprised if they turned over Dublin, but I think Dublin as well have a bit of quality going in. Bit of optimism with the under-20s as well, going so well. So probably a draw on that one. I suppose, guys, Munster Senior Hurling Championship, we have 2 games on Sunday. First one in Semple Stadium, Waterford entertaining Limerick, and then Clare playing Tipperary in Cusack Park. I suppose, guys, we've gotten an awful lot of media soundbites in terms of how Davy Fitzgerald and the Waterford team are going to approach things. How do you think Waterford will approach this game against Limerick here, Rory?
Look, I suppose one thing they've got to do, they've got to try and rattle Limerick, and that's easier said than done. So I presume Davy Fitz will be bringing a game plan where they're going to disrupt whatever Limerick are doing. That's going to take massive intensity, but also it's going to require them being really clever on the ball themselves and what they do with it. Kieran Lyons has caused problems for Limerick last year in midfield. I think he popped over 4 or 5 points from midfield in the Gaelic rounds in that match last year, and was a real threat. And it's something I just noticed with Limerick, where you had Tynan got 4 or 5 points there from midfield against them as well. It's just maybe something that the Limerick game plan with the midfielders dropping back at times, that they are leaving themselves vulnerable to a sharpshooter out there. And just even thinking back to the Munster final, the great comeback against Tipperary a few years ago, where Jason Ford kind of went out around midfield and tipped over, I think it was 5-6 points from play in the first half. So it is maybe if you were spotting the weakness with Limerick, is just tightening up and leaving a shooter free midfield. That said, like, Kieran Lyons is serious hurler with pace, and he is something that I'm sure where everyone's talking about what Waterford are doing, but John Kiley and Kinnerk would have been looking at the threats. From a Waterford, from a Limerick point of view, we're looking at how to shut down the main threats of Waterford. And if you quieten Kieran Lyons and Desi, if presumably Desi is going to be back inside in the full forward line, you'd hope from a neutral's point of view anyway that he would be, and Mikey Kiley as well. And like, there is a big threat there. Look, and the bookies at this 8 points, and Limerick are 1 to 10 on. I just don't see that. Like, this is Munster Championship, and there's a history of upsets in Munster Championship, especially in round 1. And I just see this game, like, I have a sneaking feeling here that Waterford are going to come out with a massive game. And yeah, and we spoke about this last week when we were naming our top 3s. From a Waterford point of view, it's probably a game they have to win, because this is essentially their home game. They lose this then, and it doesn't get any easier, like in Munster. So yeah, from a Waterford point of view, beating Limerick here would really give them a great chance of qualifying. So yeah, look, I'm going to go with Limerick, but I actually think it's going to be one of these games where it might even be losing at half time or down to the last stretch, something like the Galway game last year, where it comes right down into injury time. I'm just predicting it'll be a massive humdinger here, and hopefully it will, just to set the championship alight. Would be great if it was, but yeah, I still think Limerick. What really impressed me last year with Limerick was how they managed to still get out of the tight games, like that Munster final against Clare, where at numerous stages the kitchen sink was thrown at them, and they still kept their cool and were very calm in possession when they had to be. Same against Galway when they were under pressure. Like, they just seem to know how to manage these moments. So are Waterford going to put them under pressure? I imagine they will, and they won't be as standoffish as Kilkenny were in the league final. They will rattle into Limerick. Have they the firepower off the bench? I don't think so. Limerick, as we've seen, were able to just smoothly, cover over the injuries and illness they had going into the league final. And that's a huge plus, that they have confidence in the player coming in next to them. Whereas Waterford, I'm sure, like, when they are going down the bench, there will be guys that maybe aren't as experienced or as proven at this level, but at the same time, Waterford can put out a serious 15 And I just thinking this is going to be a lot closer than the bookies are thinking. And we're talking puck of a ball thing, but again, you'd have to fancy Limerick even in a tight game.
Yeah, Kieran, I'll throw that question that I aimed at Rory. How do Waterford stop Limerick on Sunday?
I take that up two ways. How do they stop, or how do I think Davy's going to plan to stop him? And I think the short answer is no one knows. I think a lot of people are fearing is that this is we're delighted we're back to championship, and I think the fear is that it's going to be a tactical game, and it won't be a one for the ages. But yeah, I think teams have shown even this year, like Tipperary, the way they approached the game, they pushed up on them. They got in their face. The work rate has to be high, the intensity has to be high. When you push up on them. I think it's hard to force Limerick to make mistakes, but I think that's the only chance you get is that you put enough pressure on them that they might make mistakes. The one thing about Limerick is, and their power to adapt, and we've seen it over the last few years, and it's probably a masterclass from Connacht. But as Rory said there, we might go in down at half time, even a couple of points, but it's the way he changes it all in a few minutes, and we come back out. I think we saw it in the Tipperary game. We went in 4 points down to Tipperary at half time, and Limerick came out in the second half like a different team and just blitzed Tipperary. And I think for a team to beat Limerick, they'll have to bring that game for 70 minutes. And I think Waterford, I think the game that stood out for me was the All-Ireland semi-final in, I think it was 21. It was at the 50% crowd. Waterford came out of the blocks, and the first quarter, like they just threw everything at Limerick. Physically, but when you looked at the scoreline after the first quarter, I think they were down by a point. And I think that must have been so demoralising for Waterford to put everything into it. And I think from that point on, Limerick just, blew them away. Their record against Limerick over the last few years isn't good. I think on average it's like 7-8 points difference between the teams. With David, we don't know what's coming. We honestly don't know what's coming. There is, so much worried about these potential injuries. I think Colin Prunty, if he is out, will be a huge loss. I think, I think if he's not in the field, that Gillan will be a huge target man for Limerick. Ozzie Gleeson, we know how influential he'll be. If he doesn't feature, Ira Daly, another big ball winner as well. So I think it all depends on what person they'll take to the field, what position they take it. We've all heard about, Desi Hutchinson in the league playing so far out from goal. But the one thing in history, if you look at any Davies teams, he has one plan. So if plan A or plan B the plan A doesn't work, there's no changing it up. I've seen it with Wexford over the years. I think they just stick with it regardless, and if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. I think they'll have put so much into this game, and if they do lose, next week going into an away game against Cork, I think you're putting yourselves under huge pressure. I don't know, is it a possibility that Davey might say, we'll forfeit this game and just focus on Cork the next day out, because you could put so much into this one game and it could define your season. It's so hard to know, but I do think, looking at the result, I think Limerick will be strong enough. I think they've shown that they can battle and they can get results even when they're not playing well. Sign of a very good team. I agree. We might be down at half time, but I think Waterford will come at us hard in the first half. But I think we will find a way. Limerick will plug away. They'll play their own game. I think they will find a way.
I just hope that Waterford just give it an absolute rattle on Sunday, guys. I mean, they've really nothing to lose. As you said, Rory, 1-10 on, and a Munster Senior Hurling Championship game, first round game, is an absolute ludicrous odds, really. I mean, Waterford have been preparing here for the last 3 to 4 weeks on the Munster Senior Hurling Championship. And I mean, they've quality players right down the middle here. I mean, like you think of Jamie Barron, you think of Jack Fagan, Montgomery, Desi Hutchinson, Mikey Kiley inside. Hopefully there's some direct ball into those two guys. Early ball, just to really test out the Limerick for a 1-10 on fixture here. I think it's I think Waterford, the run game as well with Callum Lyons, they're well capable of posing problems. They posed problems for Limerick in third quarter last year in the championship. So, as you say, Rory, this should be an eagerly competitive game.
Yeah, and I don't think there's any fear of Waterford holding back for Cork the next week. Like, I think with knowing the way Davy Fitz thinks, getting one over on Kinnerk, I'd say, because Davy does pride himself as being a tactical genius himself. Without the success, and if you think about it, the last 10 All Irelands, 5 of them have been won by Kinnerk trained sides, and 4 with Limerick, 1 with Clare, unfortunately. But at the same time, you're talking about 2 counties that hadn't been winning All Irelands traditionally, and to come in and win 5 of the last 10. But he'd be mad to get one over there, because people looking back at 2013 are beginning to give more and more credit to Kinnerk based on what he's done afterwards with Limerick as well. Especially with the type of game Clare played in 2013. And I'd say Davy is mad to from his point of view, set a bit of a record straight that, that he's right up there as well. And so, look, I think from a personal point of view, he's going to be mad to win this game and be the one to beat Limerick. And I think that's why the last 3 weeks would have been all out for this match. I'd say Cork have not been mentioned yet in a Waterford dressing room. So, look, that's it. If things go badly wrong here for Waterford and they ship a beating, it's going to damage the players' faith in Davy here, because as well, they're, as we said, this is a home game for them. He's probably obviously he's been instilling in them a belief that they are quite capable of winning this match, and that his game plan will win the game for them. And if that doesn't work out, it's going to be, it's going to be hard to pick them back up for that Cork game then. So, look, I just see the way things are and the way Limerick won the league final so comfortably. You have people. I'm hearing a lot of people saying, look, there's no weaknesses in the team. They're the perfect team. But look, there are weaknesses in every team, and it's just about exploiting them on the day. Any player can have a bad game in a certain day, and it's just, the opposition exploiting things like that. And as we said, 12 months ago, people would have been talking about Waterford as the team to challenge Limerick. That didn't transpire, but that was based on what they had shown previously. So can they bring their best performance to Thurles? Look, remains to be seen. I just have a feeling that's going to be good. And look, in Thurles as well, it is hard to, it's a huge pitch. It's hard to maybe get ultra defensive and shut things down. So I do think it will be, a high scoring and game, as well as it being intense and physical. The Munster final last year, Clare Limerick, now it was a wet surface as well, which made the ball stick a small bit. That was the one game I've seen in Thurles where it never really opened in 70 minutes. The intensity continued the whole way through. Sunday promised, so far anyway, sunny, and seems to be sunny dry, so should be quick surface there, and it's just going to be, I just see it being a bit more open, especially second half. But yeah, look, as I said earlier, I just see Limerick just edging it here in a close one. Maybe from John Kiley point of view, a close game is really what they need as well, just to kind of bring things back down to earth a bit, and bring some of the media back down, because as we saw last year, when it came to the crunch, there wasn't anything really between a lot of teams. Limerick had to fight through tough games, and I'm sure that's how John Kiley sees this championship panning out as well.
Yeah, and we're basing all that in league form. I think the media has gone completely crazy on it. It's been league form. Teams are going to hold back for championship, and it's different gravy completely. We all know that. So, I think by Sunday afternoon we'll have an idea where things are. But, basing evidence on league form of this year, it's been looking good, but, you just don't know.
Kieran, the team news for Limerick will be announced on Friday at 9 a.m. Do you expect any changes from that side that won the National Hurling League final against Kilkenny? Now, I suppose the Kilkenny challenge was a little bit less than what Limerick and the supporters had expected, but do you expect any personnel changes going in for Limerick in this opening round game?
Yeah, I think based on, depending on Declan Hannon and Kyle Hayes, I think if they're back in and fit, they'll play. I think Will O'Donoghue will play. I think the Limerick team, we all go on about the selection choice, but I still think the team picks itself. We'll have Nicky Quaid, no doubt. Sean Finn, Barry Nash, and I think Mike Casey will be full back. I think all the signs in the league point that Mike Casey is the number one over Dan Marcy at full back anyway. I think the half back line, there's no argument there. Burns, Hannon, and Kyle Hayes at fit. Will O'Donoghue midfield. Tom Morrissey, Groat Hegarty, and Keane Lynch. And I think Shane Flanagan, who I was worried about, in a couple of games in the league, but the last year was really, really good. I think it'd be Peter Casey, Flanagan, and Aaron Gillan. I think all the talk about the squad depth, but I think the team still it kind of picks itself really, doesn't it? I think Gillan will be a huge target, especially if Prunty's missing. I think he's been known over the years to be that go-to man in there, and I think one thing for Waterford as well is we've seen him, especially in the earlier rounds of the league, is like if Davy fires these boys up too much and they come out, and is there a chance of a red card or either side, because they've had a few 4 or 5 over the league, so I think that'd be one thing that would be a concern if I was a fan. If you can wind lads up, but there's a limit.
Passions are running high here a little bit. I think that could be a bit of a watch here in terms of maybe red cards early. But I suppose, Kieran, not for Limerick for you, is it?
Yeah, I think it will be close, possibly in the first half. But I think Limerick will plod away. They'll play their game. I think, as Rory said earlier, the Limerick bench will be stronger. I think if the 3 players that have been named, like Prunty, Ozzie Gleeson, and Iarla Daly, are missing, I think that will be a huge hindrance to Waterford, especially Ozzie Gleeson, to what he brings to the team. So yeah, I still think Limerick will win by at least 4 or 5 points.
Okay, Rory, were you kind of hedging for Limerick as well?
Yeah, I was. I think so. As I said, I just think it'll be a lot tighter than what's been forecast. And I'm trying to go with Kieran, maybe even a 1-score game, but a victory for Limerick in the end. And just hoping that it does transpire to be this great opening to the championship, and if not in Thurles, I reckon we'll get one in Ennis anyway.
Absolutely. You've been itching to talk about this game, Rory, for the last 20 minutes or so, I suppose.
We go now, Mark, will we?
Oh, I'll tell you what, we could let him go here. Rory, Brian Lohan, Clare entertaining Liam Cahill's Tipperary. I suppose, what's your, expectations for Clare first off going in with team news, and what are you expecting on Sunday? Yeah,
look, so first of all, looking, even just had a quick look at the odds just to see how the bookies see it, and it's exactly like even, both sides are evens for it, like, and that's probably the way you're looking into it. Again, I'm kind of inclined to look back at championship form, and like we're looking at a team that lost every game in the Munster Championship last year, and suddenly they're being talked up as All-Ireland contenders, and maybe they are, but I think they have to go up and be Clare and Ennis for me anyway, to be talked about. That's really, that'll show that I think that they're serious contenders if it happens. So the closer I get to the game, the more bullish I kind of am from a Clare point of view, based on like the last time, based on last year's championship more or less. And the fact I think Clare are a bit stronger this year. Like you're talking about Mark Rogers, who missed most of the last campaign through injury. Just his only feature really is coming off the bench, I think, in a couple of games near the end of the championship. Missed all around Robin and Munster. We're talking as well like Shane O'Morey back in the squad, just coming off the bench, even like with his pace as the game opens up. That's another plus that Clare didn't have last year. Aidan McCarthy as well missed the whole championship last year. So I definitely think Clare are in a better position, and just getting onto team selection, based on the fact that Adam Hogan didn't play for the Clare 20s, like he's set to start now for the seniors, because had he played for the Clare 20s with the new 7-day rule, he wouldn't have been able to play the senior match. So that's a sign that he's going to start, and I think he does strengthen our backline. He's probably the been talked about for a couple of years since he started for Tulla last year in the Hartig campaign full back, and played very well for the Clare 20s last year as a lad below his age, let's say, playing. And I think he's going to slot in cornerback for Clare, and he's just kind of a tight defender, very pacey, and just kind of on the ball, clever on the ball, and nothing too flashy, just does his job really well. I think that's exactly what Clare kind of needed. Rory Hayes then had wrist injury. He could be the guy to lose out. Broke his wrist a couple of weeks ago. I think he's back fully training, but could be the lad to lose out. I actually see a future for Rory Hayes maybe at wing back for Clare. I just think a cornerback, like he's one of these guys that tries to win every single ball, which is impossible. And then when he doesn't, as we saw like in the Munster final last year, when things can go wrong, he can ship a lot of scores. And he's a serious hurler and very good going forward, and actually takes a point or two as well. So I think that may be where his future is. But from a Clare point of view, like in terms of what could have been we spoke about teams going into championships with injury crisis, and we'll get on to Tipperary in a bit in terms of what they're missing this year in terms of injuries. Clare, like we've David Fitzgerald out with a suspension, and other than that, like there's a lot of big selection of players to select from, and that's a huge plus for Lohan, especially a home game in Ennis. It is a tough place to go. Actually, there was an interesting table appeared during the week based on the round robins of the 3 seasons, and Clare actually have accumulated the most points in Munster round robin of the 3 seasons that have been played. Now, saying that, the only team to have beaten Clare in Ennis so far were Tipperary, so I'm sure like that's something that Tipperary have been reminded of this week as well. Look, I suppose from a Clare point of view, it is the old enemy coming to Ennis, and it would be a great way to start the Munster Championship for Clare and put them right in the mix again this year. It was just so disappointing how the championship finished for Clare last year after all the promise they showed, and I'm sure like they probably went to right a few wrongs in terms of maybe bringing a consistency this year to all games that wasn't there last year, and no better place to start than round 1 in Ennis.
Absolutely, Kieran. You really did flag Clare as a big threat to Limerick last season. Do you feel the same this season?
Yeah, I just want to go through, let's say, both teams one at a time. I'm going to start with Clare. I think if Clare bring the same hunger and the form that they brought into last year, I think add that with, Abe McCarthy and Mark Rogers and, Adam Hogan coming in. I think Dave Fitzgerald missing is a loss. There's no point saying he's not. He's a huge player for him. But I think, for Clare this year, if they can bring that, I think they need the same form. Like Shane O'Donnell had a great year last year. Tony Kelly, but I think they need everyone on song. But if they do bring that, I think they'll be bang up there like the way they were last year. I think for Tipperary, I get what you're saying, Roy, about losing every game last year. But I suppose, look, to be fair to Tipperary, they're a traditional team. It probably was a one-off. It probably was coming, but I think it was probably a one-off. Tipperary lads wouldn't be long telling you how many All-Irelands they won, even without asking them. So they expect to be there. They expect to come out of the tree every year. I think for Cahill, personally, I think he probably has a point to prove. I think if Tipperary don't come out of Munster this year, I think his credentials kind of hit the floor a bit. After what happened with Waterford last year, going home for the league and bringing that with Tipperary this year, they went full strength into the league. If they do fail, you're kind of going, I think there'll be huge question marks over him. But in saying that, I really, really rate Cahill and Mikey Beavens as managers, as a management. I think they're probably the next best behind Kiley and Kinnerk. I think even look back to Cahill's days with the Tipperary 20s, the turnaround from, was it massive loss to Cork earlier on, and then to beat them in the All-Ireland final, which is, really great management display. I think as well, home advantage has to count. They have a great record in Ennis. I mentioned last week, even like Limerick were going well, they went down there 1 year and got a hiding. It's a huge game, and last week I thought that, I called my three to come out, Clare, Tipperary and Limerick. And as the week's gone on, I'm thinking, whoever loses this game, I think won't come out of Munster. I think because if that is Clare, if Clare loses this game, a week turnaround to go into Gaelic grounds in Limerick and play Limerick will be a huge ask. So to go, if you're to lose your first 2 games, puts you on the back foot straight away. So for me, I think whoever loses this game won't come out of Munster. At the minute, I'm just going to tip to Clare because, I think there's nothing between them really. And I think just home advantage, I'm going to give it to Clare on that basis.
Before I get you in here, I mean, from a Clare perspective, you've previewed it lovely. Just from a tip perspective, who are the threats that you're kind of looking at that may kind of thwart Clare on Sunday?
Yeah, I see Tipperary's threats obviously up front. Like they have this ability to hurt you on the scoreboard with mistakes. And based on like the one game that really worried me in the league was the Galway match from a Clare point of view, where the backline made a lot of mistakes, like coming out with the ball, getting turned over easily. And that's where Tipperary will punish you. Like you're talking Jason Ford, even as we saw Tynan there against Limerick, we mentioned earlier, just have this ability like to punish mistakes. Noel McGrath as well, just wonderful strikers of the ball, and an intercepted hand pass there, and suddenly quick pass into full forward line, it's in the net before you know it. One lad for Tip I'm surprised didn't feature a lot during the league was Mark Keogh, because I thought out of all the Tip young lads or new lads that came on the scene there over the last couple of years, he looked a real threat last year, especially against Limerick in the Gaelic grounds. He looked a right handful, and hasn't been seeing a lot of game time. Maybe that is a ploy, I don't know, or just other lads have stepped up and passed him out. From a plus side, I suppose, from a Clare point of view, is that like they're not facing Seamus Callan. I don't think is going to make this match in time, and just his experience is a big loss for Tipperary. Ger Brown, who last year came in and looked to be Tips. Mentioned Mark Keogh, but Ger Brown as well against Limerick come off the bench, scored 4 or 5 points in that match. He's out as well. So this isn't Tipperary don't have the strongest hand to select from going into this game. I see Clare can exploit, I think, a tip full back line that are really unsettled in terms of guys trying in new positions, like Michael Breen going back in full back line. These are guys, like, you're coming up against maybe, I wouldn't be surprised if Clare put Shane O'Donnell in full forward here. I know he had a great season last year at wing forward, but I just think in Ennis, with maybe goals in mind early, that Clare might maybe start him in there before bringing him out, just doing something a bit different. And I think he would be a real handful inside for, kind of a full back line that has just been kind of pieced together, let's say, during the league, and they're going to meet their first real threat in terms of championship on Sunday, because as we know, like, Clare's forward line can be, serious when they hit form, and I suppose we're a bit like Tipperary. It's our back line where our question marks are as well. And look, it's all set to be a cracking game, and I think more so than the Limerick Waterford game. Let's say if Limerick did suffer a defeat, you'd still fancy them to come out of Munster. If Waterford suffer a defeat, people will be saying, well, Limerick might win out all the games anyway, so Waterford's championship will be against the rest of the teams. Whereas, as Kieran pointed out in Ennis, whoever loses this game is on the back foot immediately. Like, it is as close to a knockout game in a round robin as you're going to get. So look, I just hope that from a Clare point of view that, that last year doesn't just become this kind of a false dawn and that can build on last year and be a stronger team this year. And what a start to the championship would be for Clare to beat Tipperary first game would really set them up.
I think, Rory, the advantage Tip have over Clare, they do lose, is to have a break week in week 2.
Yeah.
So if things do go wrong, at least they have 2 weeks to regroup before going away to Cork. And I think that's where Clare probably are at a little bit disadvantage, just the structure or the scheduling of the games to go away a week later to Limerick. If you do lose, I'm sure is a huge task. One point as well, Mark, I forgot to mention on Waterford is Waterford's round robin record is brutal. They've only one win to date in all round robin games, so that has to be a huge factor as well. I personally, I rate Cahill very strongly, and to have 2 years there and that record has still gone on. Is it a personnel issue, or it's hard to point out what the problem is or what the cause of it is, but it's definitely a question mark on it this year.
And that one win, remember, sorry Mark, that one win was against Tipperary last year, where they could easily be beaten in the first round, and everybody expected this huge Waterford win, remember, based on won the league, and suddenly they had to fight out a win that against a Tipperary team, as we know, that were dogged with injuries last year, with very little expectations, and so that's their one win in the championship.
Yeah, there was an experienced feel to that Tipperary side last year, and I mean, second year in, I mean, I'm thinking likes of Conor Bowe here, bring forward, middle third. Alan Tynan's come in, done a great job in terms of midfield. Brian O'Mara come in half back line, along with Ronan Marr. Carl Barrett coming back. I think there is.
I think he's hugely important, Mark. Carl Barrett and that full back line back in, the experience he brings, especially if Michael Breen does play full back. I think he'd be huge to Tipperary. Yeah,
because I mean, the Tipperary full back line was exposed in that third quarter against Limerick. Certainly, the Peter Casey goal was very opportunistic from Peter Casey, but I think from a Liam Cahill, Michael Bevan's perspective, I think alarm bells would have been ringing there, particularly in that goal. So, again, guys, am I getting the hint here? Maybe slide out for Clare here in a good match?
Today, yeah, Clare, but it could be Tipperary tomorrow. I think it's just so hard to call. Tipperary have improved. I suppose the one thing for me is that game we saw them against Limerick a few weeks ago. They brought a huge intensity. Like, is that their ceiling? Can they bring that higher? I think if they can, they have a real chance. But if that's their, the all-out intensity and work rate, I give Clare a chance. But if Tip can raise that ceiling a little bit higher, yeah, I think they're right up there. But I think this home advantage for me, I'm going to nudge it Clare.
And just a worrying aspect from that game against Limerick was when it came to 55 minutes and benches were emptied. Like, Tip got nothing, no boost from that bench, whereas obviously Limerick did, and it was just for a game that was a hard-fought league match. Both teams went at it that night. It was just maybe an indication to Barry, like, that maybe their bench, when it gets to that point of game where you want that boost from the bench, maybe it isn't there. Look, we'll find out Sunday if that's the case. Just looking, like, again, you're judging on paper, whatever, but Clare seem to, as I've mentioned, have a stronger panel this year than last year. But look, that remains to be seen when the ball is thrown in for a championship. I'd always be worried, Tipperary as well, as I mentioned, they are the one crowd who have turned Clare over in Ennis, and yeah, there is a bit of a pep in their step going into this championship. So they're a huge threat, like, and just that ability to get a goal from nothing as well that Tipperary have. But at the same time, like, if we have to believe from a Clare point of view that we can, after last year being so good in the round robin, that they can, back that up again this year. So yeah, I'm going to go with Clare. Maybe I'm going to go 4 or 5 points.
I think I would go with you there, Rory. I think just ultimately the attacking prowess of Clare, I think, will rule the day here. I think Tipper will give it a good go, provided that Clare don't leak goals here at regular times. I think that would be the key, because you do have Jason Ford and Jake Morris. If he's allowed to maybe get an early goal early, could influence games. But I think overall the balance of play, I think Clare, this is a huge game for Clare. In the calendar, get a win here and they're up and running. And I mean, dare I say, free shot against Limerick and TUS Gaelic grounds, really,
How do you see him lining up, Roy? Where do you, Tony Kelly, will they name him calling forward and give him free roam of the park? Or?
Yeah, I'd say, look, from a Clare point of view, like I think last year as well, at times Clare, it was almost like Clare forgot we had Tony Kelly in our team, especially when we got to latter stages. And like I'm thinking of the Kilkenny game where there was times where lads were shooting from crazy angles when you had Kelly like making movement looking for the ball. And so look, I think the fact as well that he's no longer on frees, like you've Aidan McCarthy there. Look, because we know when Kelly was hitting frees well, he was playing well. When he started off missing a couple of frees, it does seem to a guy that lets it, kind of affect him. Some managers like to have their best player on frees, things to get him into the game. I think it's the opposite with Kelly in that, he missed a couple of frees and suddenly it affects his performance from play as well. Yeah, I think what you said, Kieran, like they'll just name him in a position and he could pop up anywhere and he'll be moving through the lines as well. Will Tipperary designate a man marker on him? Limerick have never done that. They've let him, and I think it's been to Limerick's detriment because he has scored heavily against Limerick, and really should be trying to shut him down, because Kilkenny last year, Mikey Butler did do a good job on him. As I said, Clare kind of played into their hands a bit as well, but the quality of ball Kelly was getting, or lack of quality of ball. So sometimes I think you have to try a designated man marker on him, and if that doesn't work, then go with your zonal defence. But they have to, maybe Cathal Barrett. I don't know if Cathal Barrett gets dragged out around the field, is he the man? But I'm sure.
Will he have the fitness? Like he's only back from.
Yeah,
just back.
Yeah. Will Cathal have a player in mind for him? And look, I think he probably will, and he will be trying someone there. Look, I suppose as well, like with Clare, I don't know. Will Duggan start? He didn't set the world alight during the league. I thought last year he had a mixed championship. Maybe with Fitzgerald out, he might, just for a target and puckouts. So yeah, look, Adam Hogan, as you mentioned, will start. Probably take Rory Hayes' place in the back line. And then from there up, like really, you're probably looking at Mark Rodgers coming in overall, David Fitzgerald then at that side. And obviously players being rejigged around. David Reedy looked for really sharp in the league. I'd say he will start as well. Yeah, so basically, yeah, where O'Donnell plays is a factor as well. A big one for Clare as well is John Conlon. We know when he was injured last year, like the Clare seemed to fall asunder in that league, or in the All-Ireland semi-final against Kilkenny, and you're just wondering, what shape he's in. Like, and he's been playing senior now since 2009, 2010, nearly I'd say 2010. He kind of made his debut with Clare, so he's a lot of miles on the clock with him now. He's a lad who really looks after himself, great shape, but at the same time, like time catches up with everyone. I know centre back is probably the one position in hurling where you can read the game from now, especially in modern hurling, just get on the shoulder of lads. His delivery last year was sensational, and it was one of the reasons Clare did so well in the round robin. So he's a big factor for Clare. If Conlon is, on song and fit and healthy and everything, it is a major plus. And if something goes wrong there, you just hope this year that Lohan has a better plan B than, what happened last year. It seemed to be a bit of panic when they realised Conlon wasn't going to be fit to start that game against Kilkenny. I'd have seen Diarmuid Ryan maybe as your natural successor at 6 for Conlon. I know he loves to get forward from wing back, but you just hope that every eventuality is covered this year. So look, it is a big factor though, I think, for Clare, because he basically is like the conductor of the orchestra in terms of how they play. A bit like Hannon with Limerick as well, has a central role there. So look, a fit and healthy Conlon is going to be a massive difference for Clare, and with the forward line hopefully on song, as I mentioned at the very start, as it gets closer to Sunday, and just getting a bit more and more confident. Again, against Tip, you can never be too confident.
Yeah, I think Ryan Taylor. I thought Ryan Taylor had a poor league compared to the way he was going last year, didn't he? Could he lose out, or is he just to? Yeah,
look, again, it depends on how things have been going in training, especially as I mentioned, some of the lads coming in, like Aidan McCarthy. Sorry, I forgot to mention. Aidan McCarthy is going to start for definite. So is it Ryan Taylor going to lose out, or are they going to just go with that pairing of Taylor and Malone midfield, who worked really well last year as a pair? So I would say if a player there is going to lose out based on league form now, we don't know how things have gone in the last 3 or 4 weeks of training. Ryan Taylor could be. And look, it's a serious plus if you've Ryan Taylor on the bench coming in.
Absolutely, yeah.
So yeah, it does strengthen things in terms of panel. But look, a big start here. Get the home crowd roaring early on. Like I just remember in 2019, Clare had to beat Cork and hope that Limerick beat Tip in Thurles to go through. And Shane O'Donnell had the ball in the net after about 7 seconds, and the place went bananas up there. So like that really gets the crowd rocking from the very start. So they need a good start. Put Tip on the back foot, because as I mentioned, like Clare get sloppy at any stage and you're going to get punished against Tipperary.
It's a sold out house in Cusack Park, isn't it, on Sunday, Rory?
Yeah, so for the first time in I don't know how long I'm in behind the goals, I always have a spot at the far side of the field in Cusack Park from the cameras. They'll be in behind the goals, so it'll be an interesting view and things, but look, better to try it sometimes as well. Yeah, get in early now, get a good spot in the terrace. And
I know it's great. It's great to be talking about Munster Senior Hurling Championship as well, and champions firmly on. Guys, it's been a lengthy one, but a good one tonight. Many thanks to Ruairi and Kieran. Enjoy the games at the weekend, and next week we'll review the Munster and Leinster Senior Hurling Championship round 1 round robin games. We'll also look at Joe McDonagh Cup round 3 before their bye week, and also review the underage championships as they're progressing in the next few days. Until then, lads, have a great weekend.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you for listening to this podcast episode. If you liked what you heard in this podcast, why not subscribe to the Hawkeye Sidekick podcast on either Amazon, Spotify, YouTube or Twitter platforms. You can also follow me at Hawkeye Sidekick on Facebook and Twitter for the latest sporting opinions, articles and reports.